England may have survived, but has this World Cup performance exposed deeper problems that can no longer be ignored? Harry Kane once again delivered when his country needed him most. But should England really have to depend on the same handful of players every single match? That's exactly the question being debated in today's discussion. As Simon Jordan, John Terry, and Piers Morgan take a hard look at England's narrow escape and what it could mean going forward, the conversation goes far beyond the final score. It explores concerns about leadership, defensive organisation, tactical decisions, squad selection, and whether England are showing the qualities needed to compete against the strongest teams left in the tournament. The panel also weighs in on Thomas Tuchel's management, the upcoming challenge against Mexico, and even compares England's fortunes with an improving United States team. As you watch, pay close attention to where the panel agrees and where they strongly disagree. Do you think England are genuine contenders, or are the warning signs becoming impossible to ignore? Can Harry Kane continue carrying this team, or is someone else going to have to step up? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy balanced football discussions and in-depth analysis like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Now let's watch the discussion together, and I'll share my thoughts afterward.
With more egos in the Real Madrid dressing room, joining me, John Terry, and of course, Simon Jordan. Welcome, gentlemen. John, we were about 12 minutes away from Armageddon. I mean, it was no exaggeration to say that if Harry Kane hadn't scored those 2 goals, that would have probably been the most cataclysmically disastrous result in the history of England World Cup campaigns. We got lucky.
I think we did, Piers, actually. I also have to give credit to Congo. I thought they were a lot better than I personally thought going into the game. So we have to give them credit. But also, yeah, like you say, we were 10, 15 minutes away from being knocked out if it wasn't for Harry. And listen, we can't keep relying on Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham in the later stages of these games. Everyone else needs to start chipping in at the moment. And we're not getting that from our wide players, especially. I think they've been a big disappointment in this World Cup. We spoke about, some of them being impact players as well. But we haven't seen that at all. So overall, really disappointed. And I think the thing that disappoints me most is the chances that we're giving away. Was it Wissa? Wissa had the chance, didn't he, for them just before half-time where he hit the post. If that's 2-0, the game's a completely different game.
Yeah.
So worrying that we're giving away so many big chances. I think our centre-backs, are very good, but don't seem to be clicking fully at the moment. Jed Spence wasn't good at all for me the other night.
Well, you called him out early on this show, actually, as a problem, potentially. This right-back issue, JT, has become a massive problem. I mean, there's an irony because Declan Rice ends up playing at right back. Does a very good job, actually, at right back. Yeah. He doesn't want to play there. He made that clear after the game. I actually talked to Thomas Tuchel specifically about Declan Rice playing at right back when Mikel Arteta very briefly put him there a few weeks before the end of the season. And it became a complete disaster because it meant he had to change all other positions. I think Zubimendi was put on, then taken off again. It was chaos, all because of that decision to take one of your best midfield players and put him at right back. So the question is not whether Declan Rice is good there. I think he'd be better than Spence. But we can't surely go into the Mexico game with Declan Rice at right back, can we?
Definitely not for me. I think it'll be a big move from the manager if he does that. If he takes the best holding midfielder in the world, not only at the World Cup, in the world, in Declan Rice and puts him at right back. I think if you're an English manager and you make that move the other night, I think there's headlines and there's big pressure on you for making that. If he does that from the start of the game, I think it's a complete backward step from the manager. And I just don't understand why he's brought Trevor into the squad after Livramento goes down injured. We knew Reece James was always going to find it difficult coming into this World Cup, playing 2-3 games in the space of 7 to 10 days. So your backup then becomes more important. We've spoken about Trent. Trent should have been here for me. But I just don't understand when you have Trevor on the bench and in the squad, why he's not bringing him on. And listen, Declan will go right back. If you put Declan Rice in goal, he'll do a great job because he's such a good professional and such a top player.
Yeah.
I mean, look at our first goal. He just delivers the ball into an area, into a dangerous area, into the box. We pick up the second ball. We then deliver another cross into the box and Harry Kane gets on the end of it. Declan can play right back, but I definitely don't want to see him playing right back in against Mexico.
Simon, the reality is we could have been having a very, very different show, couldn't we, tonight? We could have been literally talking about a disaster that would almost certainly, I think, have ended with Thomas Tuchel getting sacked, because there would have been outrage from fans everywhere. So Harry Kane was brilliant. I thought that the goals he took, the way he took them, the second one in particular, was just unbelievable brilliance by a guy who has scored 71 goals this season. I mean, it's completely insane numbers. I think only Messi. Messi's
it's remarkable. It's remarkable.
But, you know, Harry Kane said afterwards, Simon, this is the point I was going to ask you about. He said at the end that he thought it was our best performance. Now, what do you say to that?
Well, he's obviously going to the Erik ten Hag way of seeing the game, and you know, you can't bullshit you can't kid a kidder. I mean, look, the bottom line is John talks about whether there's a decision that's going to be made about Declan Rice playing at right back. Of course, if the outcome goes against England, if he made that decision, then Thomas Tuchel would have the consequences of it. If he won the game, then people would adjudicate it that way. I think the decision around right back, despite the fact we've got all this debate about who, when, why and what should be there, I think it's also exacerbated and compounded by the lack of leadership amongst the two central defenders, because I think Guehi, whilst being a very good player, is in this sort of space where he's been transferred from Crystal Palace to Manchester City. He's not quite assumed the role of an elite defender in terms of leadership terms. He's not a John Terry in leadership capabilities. And you've got Quansah there, which is establishing himself. So I think if you'd have had a leading centre-half, like maybe even John Stones in there, he would have been making sure that people were organised.
Quansah
wouldn't have been coming across.
Maybe Harry Maguire.
Or maybe Harry Maguire. So all of those issues create an outcome. But going to your point about the game in and of itself, I look at it and I always want to be in the camp of a half-full glass. But I think that performance ranks up there for periods of the game as one of the most abject England performances that we've seen for some time. I find it almost incomprehensible that we start a game unprepared for the Congolese to be anything other than compliant, i.e., banking up and defending. And the fact that they didn't surprised us. If you look at the first 5 minutes of the game, you would expect, and John, jump in and correct me if you think I'm wrong, that the best way to start a game with a side that we think is going to be defensively minded is jump on their throat, put them under pressure and maybe create some outcomes. And the first ball we get from Madueke into the box, there's nobody in there. And then all of a sudden, we're a goal down. Now, Harry Kane, to me, whilst he scored 2 wonderful goals, I don't think he played particularly well. And I don't think this idea that we can say that despite the resolution, despite the belief that we didn't give up, and that's the least we can expect from the players, that this was in any shape or form a particularly impressive performance from the England team. John, do you agree or disagree?
No, Simon, I would agree. Firstly, that talking about the centre-backs, I think they've both been very good for their clubs. Ezri's been superb for Aston Villa this year. Mark Guehi,
but they're not leaders,
well.
John. They're not leaders like you.
Yeah. I think you can look at this generation, though. It's not just those two. I don't think we can highlight those two. I don't think there's leaders in this generation, unfortunately. Like, for me, when I look at the first goal, Jed Spencer's got to be aware of what's behind him. You have to make contact. You have to win that first ball. You cannot let that ball go behind you because you know that Madueke's not tracked back. That's the first issue. You make sure after 6 or 7 minutes, he's back helping you in the penalty box, firstly. You want to keep things really tight in the game, but I don't think you can pin that on the two centre-halves. I actually think they've both been...
Well, the reason why I'm saying that, John, the reason why I'm saying that, I'm not criticising their competency. I'm criticising the leadership and organisation structure because they're not established international players.
But I agree with Simon there, because I think if you think back to our great central defence partnerships, I mean, JT, obviously you were part of that for a very long time. Rio Ferdinand, and players of this quality, they lead that middle central defence area and they boss the back four. And it seemed to me last night we were giving so much space to a very lively, good, quick, threatening Congo side. I would also add to the mix of big disappointments last night. You know, Jordan Pickford came into this tournament as being heralded as one of the great goalkeepers of the world. To be beaten on his near post, you know, Spence went missing, yes, but there's no way Pickford should have been beaten in that way. Was there, John?
No, I would agree with that. I think he'll be so disappointed with conceding in that manner for sure. But for me, I'm like Simon here a little bit. I look at it and go, yeah, we were poor. But I also said this to you, Simon, as well. We had so many big chances, Piers, in the game where I'm going, the keeper can't keep making these saves. Harry Kane, Jude Bellingham had some great headers saved. And also on a different day, that could be 3 or 4-1 without playing too well in the game as well, taking our chances. We didn't do it. But like I said, if we're not going to take our chances and if Harry and Jude are not going to be taking them, you need the others to chip in and contribute at some point. on the flip side of that, we need to tighten up at the back. Now, I'm not sure who comes in at right back because he hasn't showed that he's going to play Trevor and Trev's going to come in. Also, it's a big game for Trevor to come in against Mexico.
Yeah, I completely agree.
But conversely, John, but conversely, sorry, Piers, but conversely, we could have been 2-0 down. And I look at the team and I can't work out what I'm looking at, John. And I'm not just trying to be destructively critical. I look at Arsenal players, I look at Declan and Saka, they look knackered. I look at Rashford and Madueke. They look like, neither one of them got any end product. And I look around the team and it looked like a side that didn't look like a cohesive unit. There was no fluidity. Declan Rice was pinging. Declan Rice can put a ball on a sixpence. And the first 2 or 3 corners he took didn't go past the first man, so he starts hitting big corners to the back post. And all of this doesn't fill me with confidence about coming through games. Thomas Tuchel doesn't care how he wins this tournament, John, does he? Look at the way Chelsea won the Champions League when they beat Man City. It wasn't stylistic, it was outcomes. But when we see this team playing the way they are, if we come up against the French, we're going to get beat fucking 19-0. I mean, I know that's an exaggeration, but when we look at the opposition that we've got to come up against,
what did you think,
fill us with confidence,
Simon, what did you think of the England players, all belting out Wonderwall at the end of a scrappy little win against Congo?
Well, I tell you what, I'd rather them sing that than it's coming home. But the fact is, I also felt to myself, well, who's the best person to ask? So I asked Noel because it's his song, and he's texting me through the game going, "Fucking hell, this ain't great." And he's thrilled. He's thrilled because his song's getting played and his kids are delighted. So he's dining out on it. Although he thinks he's going to get about £1.47 from the streaming rights if they get to the final. But he's thrilled by it, absolutely.
John,
I actually don't mind it, me. I don't mind that at the end of the game.
Well, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? How much do you celebrate? Because obviously the fans have all gone down there. They put up with a lot in that game. It's come good. It's very ecstatic at the end. We're all leaping around, obviously. Brilliant stuff from Kane. Does it really matter, JT, do you think, if you go over the top a bit and celebrate?
It does a little bit. And you'll be standing there as players going, you owe it to the supporters, firstly, that have travelled a long way and paid a lot of money to be there. So first of all, you owe it. But I'm pretty sure there'll be a few of them standing there or having a conversation in the dressing room going, we need to be miles better here because that's not good enough. And I think the players will know that. They know they've been poor the last 3 games for me. So Mexico in the Aztec altitude is going to be so difficult. And Simon's spot on. When he said the players look shattered, I was watching Dex, who's a fit boy. I thought he looked shattered after 60 minutes. And then he goes right back against their winger. And I felt for him a little bit, but he's such a good player and so professional. He goes there and does a great job. And I think you're right. He could go there and be better than any right back we've probably got at the moment.
John, you've played at high altitude. I mean, this is going to be a real issue. Even Tuchel has said, because it's 7,200 feet above sea level. Tuchel said, my understanding is we cannot adapt to the altitude. It's a huge advantage Mexico have. There's not enough time. We knew that before. It's just a disadvantage with which we will have to deal. But we showed the attitude. So he's matching attitude against altitude. What is the reality, John? When you're playing at high altitude as an elite footballer, what are the particular difficulties? Is it shortness of breath? Is it but apparently you urinate a lot more, for example, and so on? I mean, what are the practical realities of playing at high altitude?
Piers, you would feel this a lot. You want to train and you want to work harder, but you physically can't. So,
right.
So it's like, you're absolutely shattered and you see someone make a run, you make a little short burst, and then it takes you a little bit longer to get your breath and they go off again and you've got to then match that. Listen, I was doing South African TV when South Africa played Mexico in the very first game of this World Cup. And we got the privilege to speak to some South African players after the game, live and after in the studios. And they were saying, wow, that is ridiculous. And the South Africans play at 1,700 metres, I think, and Mexico's 2,200 metres.
Yeah.
So for them to be saying how difficult it was and how short of breath they was, I think we're going to find it very, very difficult.
And it's open air, the Aztec. I mean, Simon, let me bring you in here. It's open air, Simon.
And it's also...
It's going to be boiling hot. It's going to be high altitude. It's going to be 90,000 Mexican fans.
Apparently it's going to rain. Apparently Apparently it's going to rain, Piers. And I was talking to Brad Fiedler, and I wanted to say to John about this, because obviously you've played at altitude. You know we've got a built-in excuse to some extent, right, which I don't want to allow us, right? But Fiedler was saying there's this 20-minute part of the game, the first 20 minutes, where the Mexicans will try and suffocate you in terms of work very hard, press you, and make you work very hard in the first 20 minutes of the game and suck the oxygen out of you and maybe score a goal and then create the outcome that they want. Is that likely to be the way you think the Mexicans can play? Because let's have it right. This Mexican side are not a good side. If we play them on the basis of what the team that they are, and rather than the stadium and the conditions, we'll bash them up. Their stable diet of friendlies over the last 2 years doesn't set them in good stead. But is he right to say that the first 20 minutes is where the game might be won and lost by the Mexicans doing what I've just described?
Yeah, you watch every game of Mexico in this World Cup, they've been exactly that, a really high-press team. They've got two really good players from the up front. Jimenez, who we know played at Fulham for a little bit, and is just re-signed for Wolves. And Quinones down the left as well. He's so fast, so quick and so strong. They set the tempo right from the start of every single game. They go after defenders, they chase everything down, and they try and get in the faces of every single team. So again, I'm hoping that the analysis boys and the players do their research going into the game as well, because we might need to be the opposite of that. We might actually need to take the sting out of it and feel your way into the game.
Piers, do you look at this as a massively, materially huge disadvantage and huge advantage to England that Mexico have not only got this game in those conditions at their stadium, but not you know, they are the host nation. I know it goes with the territory, and some would say England had an advantage in 1966, but that wasn't with climate and so on and so forth. Do you think this is the wrong call for Mexico to have this advantage?
Well, no, I think because they are one of the host nations, so you're going to get an inbuilt advantage. What is very interesting to me is if you analyse the stats. So they've had this incredible fortress-like run, right? They've lost twice competitively in 56 years at the Azteca Stadium. 70 wins from 89 games, 17 draws, just 2 defeats, right? They're unbeaten in 10 World Cup games there. However, if you look at who they've played, so they've played 26 matches in the stadium since their last defeat to the US in 2013. They've played 28 games since then. They've faced Panama 4 times, New Zealand, Israel, El Salvador twice, Canada twice, Honduras 4 times, Costa Rica twice, the US twice, Scotland, Guatemala, Jamaica twice, and Portugal. Now, you know, let's be clear, in those 28 games, we're not talking the elite of world football. Portugal, I guess, would be the best team there quite comfortably. So these stats are not necessarily representative of reality. England are way ahead of Mexico in the current world rankings. What do you think, Jonathan?
Also, we've struggled to break Ghana down. We've struggled to break Panama down. We struggled against Congo also. But also, I'm in agreement with you both. Man for man, we are miles better than this Mexican team, man for man. But conditions, home advantage, stadium, the altitude has to come into play. So the players have to understand that going into this game. We don't have to win the game in the first 20, 30 minutes. This game is a completely different
do we have to win it, John? Do we have to win it in 90 minutes? In other words, if it goes to extra time, does that become a massive advantage to the Mexicans, do you think?
Yeah, for me, the longer it goes on, the better for them, if I'm honest. But also, Piers, they don't concede many goals. They often score 1 or 2 goals in games. And I'm looking at us going, are we a team that's going to go and score 2 or 3 goals? I'm not sure at the minute.
Well, the problem I have, let me bring Simon in here. You know, I saw last night at halftime, they interviewed the assistant manager, can't remember his name, the England guy. Barry. And he said...
Barry.
Yeah, and he was saying, you know, we need to sort of take the handbrake off, to which I heard one of the commentators say, well, I thought that was what we were going to do to start with. You know, is there an argument, Simon, that in Mexico, because of this issue, of if it goes to extra time, we could be screwed just on exhaustion, should we just take the handbrake off from the start of the game? Should we attack, go after the Mexicans, try and get that early goal? Because it seemed to me that last night, the moment Congo scored, everything changed, right? We suddenly looked really fragile. But had we scored first, as JT said, we got loads of chances, we could have run away with it. So I just think we start too slowly. You know, we don't come out the traps. We're like the greyhound that comes out and does a little loop-the-loop first.
Well, that's almost to my mind, like stating the bleeding obvious, but it seems to evade the thinking of the so-called football people. So you and I are going to have to stand back and say maybe the football people, that are the real football people apparently, know what they're talking about. But it seems almost incomprehensible, Piers, because I was talking to Stuart Pearce, I was talking to other people, all the football knowledge, that are decent football brains, and probably John as well about this, about how England needed to start against a team like the Congolese that were going to sit in, who they, by the way, didn't, and impose ourselves. And they didn't. Now, in this game, this has a unique factor, as we've just spitballed around for the last 5 minutes, which is you're playing against the conditions as well. Now, the one thing about the conditions that might help us is the fact it looks like it's going to rain. So that'll take some of the smog out of the atmosphere. But I mean, Tuchel will look at things. I still am in the camp, despite I'm not getting any evidence, and despite the fact that I'm sitting here saying it makes a bloody difficult argument to suggest England are going to win this competition. I still think that Tuchel is an elite manager. He doesn't care how he wins, as long as he wins, and he will look at this and say, "I've won this game. On to the next one."
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's turn.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
guys, can I ask you a question about Spence? I don't know if you've seen the images and the videos of him going mad at Spence again in the game from the throw-in. It seems like, I'm not saying he's picking him out, but it seems like he's having a proper dig at him. But we see the training incident that we spoke about. I'm a little bit worried. I really like Tuchel, and I think he's a top and elite manager. But when I see this, I'm like, if that's Trent, I'm not sure he's behaving like that. I'm not sure he's talking to Trent like that. And maybe that's the decision of why he's picked a couple of these players, because he can go like that to these younger players or these new players in the squad, for me.
That's interesting.
John,
you mean it'd be a harder battle with a bigger personality?
Do you really think that, John? I mean, don't forget, this is Jed Spence, who's a bit of a cocky little sod. He's the one that, wouldn't shake Thomas Frank's hand. He's the one that got hooked off the pitch and then decided to make a point with Tudor by coming back off the bench and sticking his hand out. I think he's a bit of a one, John, and I think maybe
I'm with you. Listen, I'm not his fan. I don't think he's a good defender. I don't think he's a good footballer. He's played in a really struggling Spurs side this year. But I will say, in that, I've not seen Tuchel do that to anyone else. But it just seems to be on 2 or 3 occasions he's dug Spence out. But also, for me, he's then relied on him and played him again.
I agree. It's kind of mixed messaging. Out of interest, Simon, do you have a problem with cocky little sods generally, or?
No. I mean, I'm talking about cocky little sods. I've got a bone to pick with you, Piers Morgan. I thought you and I were getting all lovely and nice, and then I get this picture of you, by the way, with your beautiful wife, which you're punching way above your weight for, at a party with my partner Michelle, saying, "Don't hurry back."
Yeah.
I thought we'd got past that stage.
No,
Piers.
we've only just started. No, it was a lovely image, me between these 2 beautiful ladies, and you trapped in New York, looking on very jealously, and you responded in exactly the way I hoped, with a sort of controlled rage, really. Let's turn to America, because the US are actually playing well. Pochettino's got them very well organised. They're playing well, but there was a hugely contentious incident last night where Balogun, who's been one of their best players and obviously a very important striker for them, was given a straight red for a foul on Muharamovic in the second half. Now, what was interesting to me about this, JT, if you look at the video of what Balogun did and what Messi did in the game when he got the hat-trick and wouldn't have scored at least 2 of them, well, looking at the pictures I posted earlier, there's not a lot of difference, where most people felt... I mean, the only difference is one gets a straight red and one gets nothing, not even a booking. What did you think of these 2 tackles? Was the Balogun one a straight red, in your opinion? And is there a massive inconsistency with what happened with Messi?
I think there's probably an inconsistency. I actually don't think either are red cards for me. I think they're coming together, and that happens. That happened loads when I played, Piers. It just seems today it's highlighted, it's slowed down, and when you slow things down, they do look really bad. Like those 2 images in an instant look really bad, but they're not for me. They're not dangerous tackles. They're not forceful. You're not going to hurt someone. Yeah, you're going to have a little scratch or a graze on the back of your calf or the ankle, but that's part and parcel for me. But the inconsistency, is that because it's Messi? I'm not sure. I don't buy into all of that. I think it's just dependent who's refereeing, who's in charge of VAR for that game.
Do you not think, though, it must... I mean, Simon, it must play a part. You've got Lionel Messi. He's the superstar poster boy of American football, right? He's the number one guy. I mean, it would be like if it was in Saudi Arabia, it'd be Ronaldo, right? If you've got the poster boy and he does that tackle, and the ref didn't even give him a booking. right? So I accept JT's point. There probably neither was probably a red card, but he didn't even give him a booking.
No, that's right. That's right. Now, I think it's disingenuous for John to say that referees don't go onto the field with a preconceived perception of players and a relationship in their mind with what they think the player is. And so with Lionel Messi, you've got a player that courts certain currency. This player may not be so well known to the referee. Of course, they're two different referees. If it was the same referee making two different decisions, then you could have a viewpoint on it. I don't think either one of them was a red card. But I think really and truly it's because players react to different, referees react to different players in a different way, and Messi carries himself in a completely different way than perhaps other players do. And so I think it is a case of, not purposefully, it's not a deliberate bias, it's a terminology that you'll be well familiar with, Piers, in your different incarnations, which is unconscious bias.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the other part of this, of course, JT, is that there's no appeals process. So it's been outrage in America from Americans who don't think he should have been sent off, that you can't even appeal against that decision. So he automatically gets suspended for at least one game. What do you think of that? Should there be an appeals process?
I think there should in such a big tournament for me. I think it's not a problem for me. I often say that the referee should be the first interview after every single game for me. As players and managers and assistant coach, your job now, you come off the field, whether you've won or lost, or you've drew the game, you have to face the press. And sometimes the last thing you want to do, I think the referee should go on and be accountable for their decisions they've made in the game before they go in the dressing room. They look at the screens, they re-watch the videos again. They then understand what they're going to say in their report. When you put them on the spot straight after a game, they've got a decision to make and they have to give you their honest feedback. And I'm sure as players and as staff, if someone says, you know what, looking at it again here, live on Sky now, or whatever it may be, I've actually got that one wrong.
Yeah.
I think the players would respect that so much more.
I agree.
Me. But I think in such a big tournament, I think it should be reviewed.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful because you players respect so much from referees with all your simulation and all your cheating and all that sort of nonsense. Of course you would. I tell you what, you should get in this
finger not my generation.
maybe a presidential pardon for Balogun.
I'm surprised. I am surprised Trump hasn't intervened. I thought there'd be something by now. There's a fake meme of Trump ordering all sorts of mayhem to erupt after it, but unfortunately it was a fake. One thing that caught my eye was quite funny, Simon. The Athletic, which is a big website, particularly for football, wrote the following: penalty shootouts are brutal. Is there a better way to settle tied games? A fairer way, a more fitting test of skills? And they've offered some alternatives. I thought we could have some fun discussing these. One is a smaller game. You drop players as we go. Reduce the pitch to one half. We play 5-on-5 plus keepers with 15 minutes to score. After 15 minutes, we flip sides so every fan in the stadium gets a good look. And we play 15 more. Final score is final score. It's 5-a-side with a keeper involved.
Well, I have to say, I think this is these are the US journalists, and they don't seem to know whether they're having a shit or a haircut. I mean, make their mind up. Do they want instantaneous gratification in games and the football is too pedestrian, or do they want protracted outcomes? Look, there's no perfect solution. John will tell you about penalty shootout because he's been involved in one, tragically, that didn't go the way he would want it to have done. But the bottom line is that is the best way, I think, to get an outcome in a game. And to some extent, with all those fannies that spend their time in player welfare, that is also a scenario that comes to a point where a game is concluded without additional onus or onerous responsibility upon the players, besides the psychological downsides of missing penalties. So I think they're miles off there.
I mean, I think the 5-a-side is bullshit. But what about the idea, JT, of going back to the golden goal? The sudden death, where the extra time, say, would be 10 minutes each side. If no one scores in the first 15 minutes... actually, they had a player thing of 10-10 and 9-9. Forget that. I just think the idea of a golden...
forget it.
Of a sudden death golden goal, would that be fairer, do you think, than a penalty shootout?
No, I don't think so. I think it's the easiest way. So many games for the players now. The last thing they need is an extra 10 or 15 minutes in a game. Maybe we should go back to the old American way. Remember when they used to run from the penalties from the halfway line?
Yes.
Back we're showing our age, yeah?
That was good, actually. I enjoyed that.
That was quite good. No, I think penalty shootouts are the best way. Listen, it's the most horrible way to go out and lose.
But that's the thing I don't like about it, is Simon, it makes heroes, but it makes villains, right? And a lot of players that miss... I mean, John went through this famously, but it does make villains out of players I think, quite an unfair way. I mean, when I saw, like, Gabriel be the one who missed the crucial one for Arsenal in the Champions League final, of all the least deserving people that season, he would be the one I would say would be least deserving.
Of course.
And he's got to live with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Of course. Of course. I mean, look, what's wrong with overcoming adversity and resilience? People make mistakes in life. There was a situation about 3, 4, 5 months ago with, I know this is probably like drinking poison for you, Piers, but there was a Tottenham goalkeeper that got hooked off 20 minutes into a game, and everybody in the world was going, it's the end of his career. He's never going to be able to cope again. And what he had was a bit of resilience, a bit of backbone, and here he is now signing a new contract. So look, whilst it's not ideal and players will be put under pressure and miss penalties, John Terry was a leader. So much so as a leader that I'm actually writing a chapter in my new book, which will be another bestseller, by the way, with John Terry being used as a blueprint for what leadership looks like. But talking about leadership, Piers, I wanted to pivot off because I know that John's going to leave us shortly and ask him about something Gary Lineker said. And whilst I tend to listen to very little what Lineker said, I wanted to ask him about this idea of Leicester City, him campaigning or advocating for the appointment of Emma Hayes as the Leicester City manager. I know that, John, I think you hold Emma in high regard. I don't think she holds me in high regard because I've been quite critical of the women's game. But that to one side. Do you really think that you can translate from being a woman manager of women's teams into the men's game with all the different foibles?
Simon, I think it's a really good topic of conversation. I've got a daughter that's coaching in Chelsea's academy at the minute. Now, if there's one woman in the world, and I've been around Emma a very long time, that I can see coming into the men's game and adapting very, very well and very comfortably and finding her feet very quickly, I have to say it's her. And Simon, I promise you, if you haven't spent time around her in a work environment, she is top. Honestly, I'm talking top. And I know that's the women's game. We can only judge her in terms of that. Do I think it will ever come over? I certainly don't sit here and say, oh, we have to have women in football. There has to be one woman managing a men's football team. If they are good enough, and I'm telling you now, Emma Hayes, at some point, I'm sure she will manage in the men's game and be one of the very first to do it.
Well, I mean, I'd ask you, John, with that in mind, look at the culture of dressing rooms, right? And I'm not suggesting it's right or wrong, and I don't have a view on Emma Hayes. Emma Hayes doesn't really want to talk to me because I've criticised the women's game, and unless you praise things in life, some people can't cope with criticism, they don't want to debate it. But the bottom line is you've got a dressing room, like your dressing room, strong dressing room back in the day. You, Ashley Cole, AVB was brought in to some extent to change that dressing room. Can you see a parallel universe where Emma Hayes coming into a dressing room with big, powerful characters, you being one of them, is going to acquiesce to Emma being in that situation, really?
I have to say, Simon, I'm not going to sit on the fence. It's not what I do. When I played, no. Now, and this generation, I'm telling you now, like I said, my daughter's coaching the academy at Chelsea. I'm telling you, she can hold her own and she can deliver. So I think as a player, when a manager first walks in the building, whether you're female or you're a male, you've got 5 minutes to impress the players and give them detail and what formation you're going to play and all of that. Yep. So whether you're a man, I don't think that matters anymore. The game's moved on. And if you can come in and hold your own, and she can, by the way, like I've said, my daughter can as well. I think just because you're a woman, you don't deserve to have the job. If you're good enough, I think you deserve an opportunity.
I agree. And don't you think also,
opinion.
I agree with that. And Simon, the other point to make is if you go back and watch the women's game 15 years ago, it was a pretty mediocre affair, both in terms of the quality of the football, but the crowds and everything else. It was just not really happening. If you look at it now, I mean, the Arsenal women's team, for example, they regularly played as sellouts at the Emirates, 60,000 people. Right? It's hugely popular. It's commercially very viable. The quality of the football is immeasurably better than it was 15 years ago. So actually, as JT said, the atmosphere around women's football, I think the respect they now command through the ability on the pitch, but also the crowds they're getting, the TV revenue and so on, everything has changed. So why wouldn't there now be a natural step to say, if a woman's good enough, she comes in?
And that's fine, Piers. And I'm all for meritocratic arguments. I get fed up with arguments that are being advanced. I know that the women were locked out of the game during the 70s and that there was a massive disadvantage. And by the way, they can have the 70s and 80s back because the game was going to hell in a handcart. It was full of terrorism and full of football hooliganism, and no one was having any money, full stop. But my argument is all about the idea of how the game is evolving, because whilst women's game is massively better and it would have had great difficulty being worse at times, I just think there's a difference between the physicality of men. I think there's a difference between the scale. People keep walking into Manchester United's dressing room and dugout and seemingly being unprepared, despite being elite managers, for the goldfish bowl that Man United is and the absolute focus. And I think coming from women's football, despite the fact it's got more focus, and certainly in America because of the success of the national team, it's got more focus, and going into men's football with the interrogation, the scale, the physicality, the expectations of it all, I think is a massive sea change. And I don't see, not because I have any resistance to it, a woman coming from women's football into the big leagues of domestic football anytime soon. But listen,
but
we will see.
Simon,
would Emma Hayes,
Simon Piers, just on that, guys, for me, I don't think a woman's going to come into management in the men's game and manage Man United or Chelsea or Man City. It'll be a process. And I think we need to get away from comparing the women's game to the men's game. It's completely different. Let's stop doing it. The women don't like it. The men don't like it. And it's completely different. We're both so different in terms of physicality.
Well said.
But when I hear Gary Lineker talk about Leicester, of where Leicester are at the moment, I can see that. I can see Emma Hayes going in at Leicester. I buy into that. Do I think she can go and manage Man United or Chelsea at the moment? No, I don't. But I think it will come a time.
But he was talking about when Leicester got relegated. And so why not? You know, I mean, it would be very interesting.
I agree.
I look at, like when Eric Ten Hag went to Man United or Rossini went to Chelsea, it's like, would she have done a worse job? Right? I'm not convinced. I think she's a tough cookie. She's got respect. It would have been very interesting. And someone's going to take the plunge, and it's going to be very interesting when that happens.
So John,
but I think on that...
So you'd be happy, John, if Emma Hayes got the interim job at Chelsea and you didn't, when you talked to me the other day about wanting to be the Chelsea manager, how'd they go past you? You'd have been thrilled, jumping up with beans if she'd have been in there for that period of time, would you?
Simon, 100%. I would get that. 100%. I would completely understand that decision for me. She's way more qualified than Simon. Listen, I'm not here bullshitting. I'm giving you my honest answers. I would 100% respect that and agree with that decision. She's way more qualified than me. She's more than capable. And also, she'd probably get me in alongside her as well.
Well, you know what? Jose Mourinho had you alongside him. He's come out with some really interesting comments about you, John Terry. Let's take a look at this.
Just two simple examples. One, I tell you the name. The second one, I don't tell you the name.
Okay.
John Terry.
Okay.
We want to win the Premier League. John was in trouble. It did. The night after we win the title, he went to clinic for a surgery. But only when we won the title.
Right.
I had another one. That's a funny one.
Okay.
But it's not funny.
Okay.
I was desperate with injuries and I need one guy to play. The guy had one small fracture in the middle toe.
Okay.
The doctor told, no problem. It's just pain.
Just pain, yeah.
You can play. There is no problem. Oh, I cannot play with pain. Oh, come on. You can play with pain. No, I cannot play with pain. No problem. We give you a small anesthetic injection.
Numb it, yeah.
And you play and you have no pain.
Yeah.
And no consequences. You are going to play easily. And the guy didn't want.
So, really interesting that. One, you're obviously a hard bastard, Terry, and I think we knew that already. But secondly, who's he talking about who wussed out? Do you know?
If it's the player I think it is.
Go on, who is it?
Oh, I don't know.
Come on, you know who it is.
If it's the player I think it is, it's Iron Robben.
Really?
I knew you were going to say Robben. I knew you were going to say that.
It's a Chelsea player.
Yeah.
But I remember Jose getting the injection himself. He later goes on to it in that interview where he has the injection himself because he wanted to feel what the player needed. And he was like, that's not so bad, you should have it. And the player was just like, no, I'm not doing it.
Fascinating. So just on that point though about you, what was the injury you were carrying at the time that he's talking about?
So I actually had in my left foot, just in between my little toe and the next one in, I had a bit of a bone growth. So every time I put my boot on, it squeezed. And honestly, it was excruciating, the pain. So I had to have a numbing injection like 15 minutes before every training session. And sometimes the training sessions were over an hour. So the injection would last an hour. And I literally had it from day one of pre-season till the end of the season when we beat Bolton. And I missed the Man United and the Newcastle game. But sometimes in training, the doctor would have to come out because I could feel it wearing off and it was so painful. I'd have to have 2 injections a day in between my toe. But
wow.
Yeah.
What is the mentality to be able to play through that kind of pain, which clearly Robin, if that's who he was talking about, and it seems it was, wasn't able to do that. What is that difference, do you think?
Well, I think for me, my mindset was, first of all, I was going to be out for 8 weeks if I had the operation. I didn't want to give any other player the opportunity to come in for 8 weeks and take my place and maybe cement their place in the team, firstly. Second of all, the manager had backed me to be his captain at the start of the season before, and I was leading the team. So again, I've spoken about this. I would have done anything for Jose.
It's interesting, Simon, what's interesting is I can relate to this a bit because in 2007, second season of America's Got Talent, #1 TV show in America, and I'm a judge on it. And I fall off a Segway on Santa Monica down on the hard walk there, the boardwalk. And I break 5 ribs and semi-collapse a lung, right? Unbelievable carnage from falling off this bloody Segway, which I didn't want to go in to start with. Anyway, this was 5 days before the final of America's Got Talent. And I was on morphine and all this stuff. And they were like, well, obviously you can't do the show. And I was like, I can barely
I'm on
breathe.
morphine, listen to this bloody story.
And do you know how Simon Cowell got me to do it? He rang and he said, Piers, don't worry, absolutely no problem. We're going to fly Louis Walsh in to sit in your chair and do it for you.
Yeah,
and that was all it took. I was strapped up like a bloody mummy on that final, but I wasn't going to get Louis Walsh. So to John's
I'm not too sure
though,
how similar the stories are, but yeah.
Well, to me, it was as big in my world as yours was in yours.
I get it.
It's a wonderful symmetry, Piers. It's a one.
Go on, Simon.
But John's a self-starter. John's a leader and a self-starter. He didn't need someone to provide him with a solution to a problem. He'd already made his own mind up. So don't try and shoehorn yourself into the same breath as John Terry.
I'll tell you the little sting in the tail was David Hasselhoff was a co-judge and he sang a vaudeville version of Perfect Moment. This is the moment. But the one that goes, this is the moment. And he was singing away live.
Did he bring you a hamburger with him?
I put my hand up. I think Jerry Springer was the host. Yeah, he was. And I put my hand up and he said, Piers, you want to speak? It was like a live finale. You want to say something about David's performance? I said, I do, yeah. And I said, because I wasn't supposed to speak, and I said, I didn't think anything could be more painful than breaking 5 ribs and collapsing a lung, but that did it, buddy. He took it extremely badly, as you can imagine. Just want to wrap things up, chaps, by talking about, I guess, 2 things that have broken quite recently about this game against Mexico. Keir Starmer is to introduce, this has happened while we've been talking, is to introduce emergency legislation tomorrow to let all the pubs stay open until 3 a.m. for the England v Mexico game. It kicks off at 1 a.m. UK, until 5 a.m., I'm sorry, because it kicks off at 1 a.m. But simultaneously has rejected Thomas Tuchel's plea for kids to be allowed to skip school on Monday. So, Simon, just those 2 things. 1, the pub staying open till 5. Do you think it's a good idea? 2, should the kids be allowed to bunk off school on Monday?
Well, it's interesting, given that some people would suggest that this government has laid waste to the hospitality industry, as did the previous one, that he's now virtue signalling to an industry that, A, didn't want him in their environments. Wasn't it all the Labour ministers were being banned from boozers left, right and centre? So it's an interesting parting little gift from Keir Starmer as we kick his backside out of number 10. As far as the young children are concerned, yeah, I think there is an argument. It's a national sport. It's a national moment. I don't want to get carried away with the importance of football, but it is such a thing that brings society together. It takes away the division. And I think there's something to be said about allowing children to see something that's so inspirational and aspirational at times, not the shit that we saw yesterday, by the way, but hopefully the performance that we see against Mexico, that lends me to the conclusion, without being a bit of a wokey, that it wouldn't be a bad thing to bring the children into a space where they can see it in a special way, rather than having to go to school and not be able to do it.
I agree. JT, finally you. What do you think of that? The 2 things, the pub staying open till 5 and then the kids.
I'm all for the pub staying open It is for sure. And also, if the parents are down the pub drinking, they're going to need a lie in the next day, aren't they?
Yeah,
so it
exactly.
makes sense to give the kids a day
And
off.
the teachers will be in the
listen,
bloody pubs too.
absolutely. Why not? Listen, it feels like something could be happening here for me. So why not get behind it fully? Give the kids a day off. I'm sure there's going to be a few sick notes in anyway. So why not give everyone a day off?
And look, let's be honest. You say something
Well,
may be
also,
happening.
oh,
Well, I was going to say, we only have to beat Mexico in the Azteca Stadium, then we only have to beat Brazil, then we only have to beat Argentina, and then we just have to beat France, who've just looked like the most marauding pack of aggressive hounds we've seen since Brazil at their height.
That's why we need the pubs open, so we can have a half-full glass, right? And the longer the pubs are open, Piers, the more chance of me, of John, of actually seeing you buy a drink.
Well, funny enough, I might be able to, because I think you're back in the UK, you two, for our next show on Monday. So we'll actually be reunited.
Indeed.
We're reunited. We might even get the rights to that song to play it. So we can all hold hands and be jubilant to seeing each other to celebrate, hopefully, a glorious victory in the Azteca Stadium. Gentlemen, thank you both very much.
Absolutely.
Another sizzling episode of the most popular World Cup show in the world. And the numbers are fantastic. So thank you both very much.
Cheers, Piers, Simon.
You're welcome.
So, after hearing that discussion, here's the biggest question. Did England's comeback prove they're genuine contenders, or did it simply hide problems that stronger opponents will expose? One of the strongest points made throughout the conversation is that individual brilliance can only carry a team so far. The panel repeatedly returned to the idea that Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham cannot be expected to rescue England every time they're under pressure, whether viewers agree or not. It's a fair concern because tournaments become increasingly demanding as the quality of opposition improves. Another notable theme was leadership. Rather than questioning the talent of England's defenders, the discussion focused on whether the team has enough vocal leaders capable of organising teammates during difficult moments. That's an important distinction because technical ability and leadership aren't always the same thing. Several comments suggested that England's defensive issues may be as much about communication and organisation as they are about individual mistakes. The debate around Thomas Tuchel was also interesting. While there was criticism of certain tactical decisions and player selections, there was also recognition that experienced managers are often judged by results rather than style. That creates an interesting balance. Should supporters accept unattractive performances if they continue producing victories, or should the overall level of play still be a concern? The upcoming match against Mexico was another key talking point. Rather than focusing only on the opposition, much of the discussion centered on the unique challenge posed by altitude, weather, and home advantage. It served as a reminder that knockout football isn't only about quality on paper conditions. Preparation and mentality can all influence the outcome. Overall, this exchange wasn't simply about one match. It raised broader questions about England's identity, consistency, and whether they have enough depth to go all the way. Winning can cover weaknesses for a while, but every round presents a tougher examination. Now it's over to you. Do you agree with Simon Jordan's concerns, or do you think John Terry is right that England are being judged too harshly after finding a way to win? Can England keep progressing, or will these issues eventually catch up with them? Share your opinion in the comments because I'd love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this analysis, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest football discussions and reactions. Thanks for watching, and remember, in tournament football, results may keep you alive, but performances often reveal how far you can really go.